back, but nobody's here anymore. So everybody's wondering what the hell happened. I told them we were going to start a new stream. So anyway, Restream IO. I don't, Restream has never done that to me before. I have no idea what happened. It could be that something went wrong locally here because we got some weird weather. No storms, but like it dropped down to 68 today from like in the high 90s. And
That's what we're going to get tomorrow. It's going to be hot today, but then the rest of the week and into the weekend is all nice.
yeah, we got this tremendous thunderstorm yesterday, and it was my cat Snack, the little one. He was so excited. He kept booming through the cat door and running around the yard, looking at every corner of the yard that was raining, and then licking the puddles. And then lightning strike, and he'd boom back in the cat door, and then he'd come running right back out. And I've never seen a cat get so excited about a storm. It was pretty cool. So,
Oh yeah, we're back.
yeah, okay.
Well, Scott's in the chat, and let Scott know too if if he wants to join in on the Can-Am talk, he's welcome.
Yes, Scott. Okay, I still got my icon.
We're working on another talk with Dan Phelps, maybe in a couple weeks, Scott. So I told Mike if he's interested and wants to ask some questions of Dan and Seth about Can-Am, he's welcome to join. And you too, Scott, are welcome to join us. So
yeah, I'm really interested in the man's life and personality. If anybody knows anything about that, that would be interesting. What makes what creates a guy like that who's raging against all the other pastors and all the other creationists, and he has his own way, don't.
He's been on it lately. Like I told you, I'll get you on the mailing list that he's been going after other pastors big time because his whole what do you call it? The gathering he has of all the colleges that he says are okay to send your kids to has dwindled down to like one or something, and he's not very happy.
Yep. I've got Ken Ham, Trust First, God, the Scientist or the Theologian, July 2nd, and Feeding People Spiritually and Physically. Come look at the sun at the Creation Museum. Are things getting worse, or is it just your imagination? He's got I get emails like once or twice a day. Now they're going beach sunrises, bush turkeys, and the kookaburra. I don't know what the hell that one's about. Richard Dawkins' ex right-hand man comes to Christ. A lot of goodies from Ken Ham, I guess.
And Joel Duff, covers them a lot too. So.
Oh yeah,
Joel Duff. If anybody else wants to know about stuff, Joel Duff covers them a lot too.
Yeah, Joel Duff does This Week in Creationism or whatever. So I've been trying to get Joel Duff to come over here and talk to me, but he's afraid of my Answers in Atheism name. And he said, I'm not sure if that's my kind of channel. And I said, no, it is. You'd be surprised, because I would love to talk
he's got a lot of fans here. So
yeah, I'd love to talk to an old earth creationist. They believe that ultimately God created the universe. And I'm hoping what he believes is that no matter what he discovers in science, it's not going to go against that. That it's going to be part of the way God did it. It's like, this is how God did it.
I think that's great. I think that's his position. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, before we got bounced, I was going to say that to the best of my knowledge, and this may change because our technology is getting incredible, but nobody has ever seen an oxygen combined with a carbon to make carbon dioxide. We've never observed that. We've only seen the footprints of what happens, and we have, by induction, basically figured that out. We figured out how these things happen, and that's how science works. It does induction all the way to the past. And in abiogenesis, what they're working on there is they're reaching way back into the dark regions where the footprints are really not exactly available to us, right? Some of them are, there are minimal footprints available from 4 billion years ago. We can't even find any rocks, that are older. Well, I guess we have some that are 4 billion years old. Ely Greenstone. There's some of that in my hometown. And but other than that, we don't have a hell of a lot going back. So we have to basically put together all of the facts. And it's interesting when you make an inference about the past, you're putting together hundreds of thousands of facts in order to do that. And all of them have to agree with each other and be compatible. You know, our natural laws, our regularities, how chemistry works, what happens when you combine certain chemicals under certain conditions. And what abiogenesis does that James Tour doesn't understand is they pick one very, very specific condition, and they find out what happens under that condition. But now, if you look back at the beginning of the Earth, there were hundreds of trillions of different environments that we could never check out all of them. We can only do the best we can to figure out, you know, what was most likely to happen. And that's how you study abiogenesis. You don't study it like Donnie here by picking a modern cell and saying, well, how did that just crawl out of a puddle? It's like, it didn't. That's impossible, Donnie. That can't happen.
It was a very simple cell, and they don't want to say that because then it destroys the complexity of the cell argument.
Yeah. So I've gotten into some amateur mycology and growing edible mushrooms like oyster mushrooms. And I've been working on a batch for 4 months, and I got my first tiny little bowl of mushrooms because my oyster mushrooms are failing. And one of the big things when you get into mycology, and there's a lot of people are getting into it now, and growing their own lion's mane and, you know, their own mushrooms. And one of the things that they find out immediately is that contamination is constant. I mean, you're constantly fighting contamination. You have to have sterile conditions. You have to do all that. Well, somebody will come along and say, well, gee, why do they grow in the wild where it's dirty, where there's, you know, there's cow poop all over the place, right? And they grow there. How do mushrooms do that? And then you can't grow them in your home without, you know, putting on rubber gloves and using alcohol and antibacterial. Well, here's the deal. If you're growing them in your home, you're picking a very specific place and time that you want these mushrooms to grow. When they grow out in the woods, they have trillions of microenvironments that they can thrive in, and 99.9% of them, they don't thrive. But every now and then you'll run into a patch of oyster mushrooms growing in the wild because it found that one microenvironment where it could survive. And this is actually how my Speed Pudding name came out. It was in a discussion with Tony on Smokey's channel about that, about these microenvironments, that there were trillions and trillions of these microenvironments. And that is what we're looking at in, you know, we're looking at when they do succeed, why do they succeed in that particular time and place? Of course, with abiogenesis, we don't know much about those environments yet, or we're learning more and more, but we're guessing. And it becomes a very difficult problem.
And the mushrooms and those kind of things also target breaking things down too.
Oh yeah.
So like my neighbor came across and was talking to me like a year or two ago, and he said, man, he goes, there are all these mushrooms growing in my yard. He says, I never had, you know, he's an original. He's lived in the neighborhood forever. And he said, I've never had them in my yard before. And I said, you cut that tree down a couple years ago, didn't you?
Yeah.
And it's breaking down all the roots and everything in his yard. So he's getting mushrooms everywhere.
Yeah, they pop up. That's why they're considered, you know, they're associated with a lot of mythology, because all of a sudden they just pop up and they're there for a few days and then they're gone. And it's like, what the fuck was that? You know, it's like a ghost popping up out of the forest floor.
Oh yeah, they show up in the little circles too, and
oh yeah,
everybody, that has to be designed. It's a circle, and it's like, nope, that's the way they. I don't know if it's the way the spores do it or what. Yeah, but it'll make a circle. Yeah.
Imagine if I were into roses. I think
I've got a whole bunch of rose flowers. My roses are doing really good. We've had great weather.
Roses, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of them. They're beautiful.
Well, any kind of gardening failures are just, really common. And that's just the way the natural world works.
Well, like you were saying about failure, yeah, you try to grow something and it dies, but you got a weed growing in the crack of your sidewalk that's doing just fine. So,
Oh my God. Yeah. And like no nutrients, just a little crack. How in the hell did it even get its roots down there? I've got one out there now that I decided not to round up. That's growing in a crack. And I just want to see. And it's glorious. It's just like, it's so healthy. I'm like, what the fuck, weed? What are you doing?
life after people, it doesn't take long.
Life finds a way. Is that Goldblum from Jurassic Park?
Yeah. So
Became famous for that
the minute we stop maintaining anything, it'll all just start going back to dust and overgrown.
Yep. So where does Donnie go here? Okay, he's got the chicken and egg problem here. What came first, DNA or DNA repair enzymes that are necessary to maintain DNA? It's like, oh my God, Donnie. Chicken and egg problems are really interesting in biology because every one of them has a story, like an amazing story that paper after paper has been created on. Like how did mammary glands develop, right? I think it was Cell Cordova was the one that famously said, well, what happened? A little mammal came out and it started licking its mother's chest and it turned into milk glands. And it's like, and I thought, what the fuck, Sal? Yeah, let's just Google this, right? And I Googled it and I ended up with this one researcher who I get tons of paper mentions on. I think it's Ofendahl or something like that, who created, basically went back and investigated the formation of mammary glands in different extant life organisms today, and taking the fossil record and also looking at the genetic structure of milk producing mammary glands. And he has a very convincing story about exactly how it happened. And it wasn't some baby crawling up on its mother's chest, but actually it does have to do with sweat a little bit. And it has to do with the hydration of eggs, basically how eggs get hydrated and how they stay wet, and how a mother can nurture eggs basically and keep them, actually give them some nutrients. And it's just an incredible story. And
I do remember that from biology class. That it's a changed sweat gland basically.
Yeah, and it's an amazing story. And there are extant species that basically nurture their eggs, by sweating on them, that sort of thing. And then the genetic evidence is incredibly good. I mean, you can see the whole structure. So your story is a hypothesis. It's not just a story. Basically, Lord of the Rings is just a story, okay? But these stories in science are hypotheses.
And like frog eggs and a lot of those things, they cover them in slimy goo to keep them from drying out. So there's a lot of different ways that they've learned to keep the eggs wet when they need to.
Yep. But there isn't anything.
And men have nipples. That's what I always throw back at them. If it was designed, why did the men get the nipples?
Yes.
That's a tough one when you throw it back on the design argument. It makes no sense if the women make the babies and feed the babies, and that's the way it's designed. And you hear that a lot lately with, back to the trans issues and everything. Well, the trans can't, breastfeed or, some kind of argument, which they can actually. But, that's why did the men get the nipples? In case they're trans, it's kind of opening up the argument the other way.
Yeah, that was the first question I asked my daddy, why I have nipples, and he told me to go weed the fucking garden. I never got a good answer.
It's probably what Donnie will say too.
Yeah, exactly.
Go weed the garden.
Go weed the garden. Okay, let's see what he says here.
The question is, what came first, DNA or DNA repair enzymes that are necessary to maintain the DNA. For a little context, we have roughly 1 million DNA lesions in our cells. In a single cell, every single day, you can have approximately 1 million new DNA mistakes or lesions. We have 50 to 60 trillion cells in our body.
That's a lot of mutations every day get repaired by DNA. He's talking about us today, life today, extant life, DNA life has nothing to do with origins at all.
Well, that's the basic understanding like I have with cancer is that we always are getting cancer. Ever since the day you're born, you're getting cancer. Yep. But the body's taking care of the bad cells. It's when it can't do that anymore that the cancer cells win.
Yeah.
Which again is, if we could just tweak the genetics, we could just keep the body keeping those cells in check, people wouldn't get cancer, theoretically.
Yeah, this idea that you're going to look at the complexity of today's cells is what they're looking at, and the complex. Like he talks in this video about how did these multicellular organisms manage to live? How did they get started? Well, Donnie, they were single cell, and then they were a slight agglomeration of single cells, right? And it went from there. You can't just look at a multicellular organization, add up all the mutations it has, and said, oh my God, we had to have DNA repair mechanism. In fact, if DNA had copied reliably, extremely reliably, during the origins of life, if RNA had copied reliably, life would have never got started. It required a high rate of mutation, a high rate of differentiation of all these different biochemicals in the beginning in order to find that one pathway through that maze and manage to be self-replicating. And repair mechanisms slowly and gradually fixed along the way, and we ended up with species. But we're looking way back, and we're looking at a lot of mathematics. There's a lot of mathematics involved in the origin of life. And that mathematics tells you a little bit about what's going on. And one of the things that could not have gone on is accurate replication in the very beginning. And again, they misunderstand how to think about origins. And he's just blathering bullshit.
Bullshit. For a long time, I'm not sure how long, but for a long time, all there was simple single cells.
Yeah.
That's...
around 2 to 3 billion years, probably.
So, yeah, they make it that it immediately happened. Almost like the story is that we had single cell, then went right to a multi-cell, and then like the Hovind story, that turned into a banana and turned into us.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, the singles, for a long time, that's all it was. So, and it was very simple. They were doing just fine. They didn't have a lot of pressure to become complex until recently.
Nitty, no. That's just no. Anyway, yeah, there's I think about origins a great deal, and I know that you don't do it the way he's doing it. It's just absolutely ridiculous. He's DNA. He's talking about all the damage of DNA. Again, he's talking about extant life forms, like current, very complicated, complex life that took a very, very long time to develop the way it did. And
after attacking the fine tuning argument in my video, what they leave out is we have no way of knowing how many trillions of reactions happened in the early seas before you got these first ones that worked out just right.
Right.
So it's also setting up a bad argument that, it just happened, like put everything in the chemical soup and life climbs out, completely leaving out, we have no idea how many tries there was.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a point where DNA replication or DNA repair, RNA repair, and everything became more advanced, right? And then evolution kind of settled down. Except every now and then, I guess things happened, and we ended up with punctuated equilibria.
Equilibrium.
Yeah, where basically there were periods when things broke down and there was rapid change. But in the beginning, the rapid change was the rule of the day. Basically, it was just constant. Like there was probably a point where there were trillions of single cell animals, and not one of them ended up the same as the other. It was just constant change going on in the very beginning.
And it's good old evolution too. The ones that weren't suited, they went extinct or just, went to stasis, and the other ones are the ones that progressed.
Yeah, and when you're thinking about natural selection, it's a really good tool to think about what happens in inside of a female today. That's basically got a bunch of eggs, okay, and there are hundreds of millions of sperms that that unite with those eggs. And out of those, something like over 50% of those die immediately and never actually create a viable pregnancy. And as you move along through that path in pregnancy, there's just all sorts of aborts. I mean, abortion is how we're designed, and that is natural selection that cuts out most of the harmful mutations immediately, just right out of the gate, before the organism is even takes any resources from the female, right? And so there's natural selection at play right there in every mating incident. There's just a ton of natural selection going on, and it goes from there until you end up with a viable organism that will reproduce at some rate.
Well, and we have to have the best of the best, because we're not laying thousands of eggs.
Right.
We have to have, a more robust system to guarantee that the one or two, if you have twins, which is, but mostly we only have one offspring at a time.
Yeah.
So you have to develop the fixes and the redundancies, or it wouldn't have worked. Yeah, we wouldn't be giving birth to viable offspring, because we don't have the option of throwing out 1,000 or 10,000 eggs into the sea, and one of them will figure it out. So
yeah, but there is some of that in the beginning. Like I think females are born with about 30,000 eggs, and males, of course, launch millions of sperms each time, and so there's a high population there. And then, of course, it settles down by the time there's a viable pregnancy and a birth and whatever. And then we end up with very few. So a lot of that selection happens in the very beginning. And that's just an interesting way to think about natural selection. I've been making a foray into something called category theory and the mathematics of life. And it's pretty incredible. It is so counter to what Donnie's doing here that it just blows me away. And
and Donnie pretty much accepts natural selection. He just changes it to his own story, right?
Yeah. And the other thing that they love to highlight a new paper that talks about a new complexity in life, right? That biologists have discovered. So they want to talk about, it's so complex that it couldn't have happened naturally, right? So it had to be an intelligence. And then a minute later, they'll say, it's so complex that scientists can't do it in the laboratory, okay? So in other words, intelligence can't do it, right? Hang on a second. So which is it? Intelligence can't do it? Natural systems can't do it? We need intelligence, but we're intelligent and we can't do it. So where do you get this idea that intelligence is the only thing that can do it? And what they do,
it's a no-win anyways, because they'll say, show us the evidence, and you'll say, well, here's the scientific paper where they did this experiment, and then they'll just say, aha, see, it took a scientist to put the stuff in the beaker.
Right.
And then they compare, well, that's just like God. And it's like, so then there's no experiment you're ever going to accept. And
Right.
it just goes round and round. It's just nonsense argument to begin with.
And every time a scientist sets up his conditions in the laboratory and his beaker, what he's doing is he's picking one tiny microenvironment and he's figuring out what happened in that condition. And that's why they do that. The James Tour, Dave Farina debate. So Tour was, they use hydrogen peroxide, and where are you going to find hydrogen peroxide in prebiotic chemistry? And Farina pointed out that, well, the reason they did that is because they don't want to contaminate the experiment with existing DNA or RNA, right? And Tour, that just flew right over Tour's head. And he's supposed to be some accomplished researcher in chemistry, and he didn't understand that simple fact.
That's the same thing I when I did my Shroud of Turin video. It's the same thing. They use certain chemicals to clean out or destroy the contaminants before they do the testing. And then they go, oh, ha, they're using this or whatever. And it's
Right.
like, well, that's what they do. That's just part of the procedure. It's not news to anybody that does that. They're just throwing it out to people that don't have any idea. That's just how it's done.
Yeah, the interesting thing is none of these people that are coming up with those stupid criticisms are actually doing the research. James Tour is not doing abiogenesis research. He claims to have written papers on it, but he actually published articles in creationism blogs and things like that. That's the only papers he's done on abiogenesis. He's a nanotube chemist or something like that. I mean, he's just in a very specific field of chemistry.
And he's very accomplished in his field. I mean, credit due, but often, like I say, people that are gifted can do one thing really, really well, but they shouldn't talk about anything else because they can't tie their own shoes. And it's nothing against their gift or their talent or their accomplishments. It just seems that when you can do one thing really, really well, you stick a microphone in their face and ask them about anything else, and it's like, oh no, take the microphone away from them.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about PhDs is PhDs become very, very focused on one particular thing. And that's how you get a PhD, right? And you can't jump outside your field and start, making vast sea of comments on YouTube about some other specialist research area without putting your foot in your mouth, as Tor does. He just seems like an evil man to me. I mean, when you watch his facial expressions and how he, gets all excited and stuff like that, would you like a dad like that? I would not like him as a daddy. I'm guessing it was a real tough road to hoe with him being your father. Anyway. Now, the other thing about, it's so complicated. Nature couldn't possibly do it. So when they say that, what they're saying is that nature is not complicated enough to do complicated things. But it's complicated now. And they will admit that when an embryo basically develops, when the egg is fertilized, all of that happens naturally with nature, right? But so they're stuck in this like paradigm from 200 or 300 years ago where they think life is some different kind of nature than other chemistry and rocks. And that just has not been shown to be the case at all, because everything in life today happens naturally according to natural laws, and we can fucking observe that and repeat it. We can mess with embryos and actually get them to fail or succeed in various ways. And we know that it's all natural from that one zygote all the way up to me, 60 trillion cells, the human being, all happen by natural processes. And as they point out, nature is complicated. Well, if nature is complicated, then why couldn't nature create complexity? Which is it? nature is complicated or nature is like a bunch of dumb rocks. It's like they're constantly creating these dichotomies and landing heavily on one side. And it all goes back to, well, if it doesn't follow the scripture, then it's the word of man and not the word of God, and blah, blah, blah.
Well, anytime I get asked any of these questions, and again, I'm a layperson, but my understanding is it's emergent.
Yeah.
If you want to know how did planets form, they're emergent.
Yeah.
How did life form? It's emergent. You want a big, long, complicated explanation? Well, go take a class or ask a scientist.
Yeah.
But I understand it as, you have a bunch of gases that collect. You get a star. Around the star, there's some stuff left that collects. You get planets. It's emergent.
Yeah.
And the same thing with life. You get the right conditions, you're going to get chemical reactions. Then the big thing is the replication, like you said. There you go. Now you've got it. But
yeah,
the question is how, or not necessarily when, because we may never know exactly when or where, but is how that reaction, not just because we can do all kind of chemistry. It's the replication thing that I think if they can answer, if you do this, you get replication, they're going to have a hard argument against abiogenesis after that.
Yeah, it's like the tornado in the junkyard creating a 747.
Ray Comfort.
Yeah, well, I had this thought about this a couple of weeks ago when I was studying this mathematics of category theory in life. We are the tornadoes in the junkyard. That's what life is. It's like a tornado. It's like a system. Like a tornado will come into being. It'll set up, and it recreates itself for a long, up to some of them up to 3 or 4 hours, and it just keeps recreating itself. Well, that's what life is like. So we are the tornadoes. Human beings are tornadoes in the junkyard, and we do indeed create 747s.
Well, Brian Cox made a good point. He was out playing with sand, and he made a sand castle, and he was talking about entropy, order to disorder, and everything. And he says, yeah, you're not going to see a sand castle just appear out of a pile of sand. He said, but when you get into quantum mechanics and everything, nothing says that it can't make a sand castle out of the pile of sand. Yeah. The probability, though, is just really low, but nothing says that it can't happen. So technically, when you get on that level, yes, you could blow a wind through a junkyard and get a 747 out the other end.
For some reason, my playback on YouTube is appearing at extremely low resolution. I don't know what that one's about. I don't know. Anyway, that's what aside. But yeah, but the idea, okay, life is this autopoietic system, they call it autopoiesis. Basically, it's self-creating. And the reason that life isn't like a machine is because life has mechanisms inside of itself that create the mechanisms that keep recreating the life. But it's never comes from the outside. There's nothing coming from the outside that makes a living cell continue to live. It's all self-contained. And it's very much like a self-contained tornado that appears and exists in that certain shape for, several hours. Life can, exist for, 100 years or whatever. And it's very much like a tornado when you look at the system. And when you look at how one biochemical mechanism creates another biochemical mechanism's input, and then it goes around and it goes around in a circle and eventually creates the chemicals that are needed for that original system to recreate the rest of the system again. And there are all these little circular things, which are very much like a tornado. Tornadoes go in circles, right? Life is roughly the same way. And we're just coming to the point.
And it's more similar than just that, because tornadoes require, 5 or 6 things have to come together,
right?
to
in
get
order
a tornado. You just
Yeah.
don't get a tornado. You have to have the fronts and the storm and the temperature and everything
yeah.
to get that.
But
And
once
that
it
again,
happens,
it's emergent of all those things coming together.
right, and it's persistent. I mean, it doesn't just form instantly and then go away. It persists in that same shape for a certain amount of time. And that's what creates the destruction. Mutable destiny. Wow, I haven't seen you for a while. The question of when is asking about a precise moment when something forms rather than viewing the object as being something sustained and defined by the processes that surround it. Now, there's a hell of a lot of wisdom in that statement. That's very good.
And basically, they're going to throw back the law of biogenesis, and it's like then you got to explain. Well, that's not a law, and even if it was, there are no living elements on the periodic table. So until you can point out a living element on the periodic table, ultimately it's non-life that life is made of.
Yeah.
So they don't have a magic molecule or a magic element either. They're just repeating, again, they repeat all the science. They just don't like it.
I just took a deep breath of non-life and converting it into myself.
At was it the speed of more than the speed of sound or something? Those molecules are flying around. I just watched Thunderfoot talking about it, explaining the implosion in the sub and everything, and how the air molecules, when you're breathing, they're zipping around like the speed of sound or something. And I was like, wow, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I'm an example of a tornado that's about to fade. Fucking life and death in old age. It's just it's a hilarious comedy. Really. It's just, I remember God being in my 20s and being extremely judgmental about old people. And like, it's like, God, do they smell funny? What is wrong with them? And then you go through your life and you very slowly get old, and then you look in the mirror and it's like, where's your judgmental attitude now, you little fucker?
The biggest thing, I can deal with the gray hair and everything. The biggest thing is just not being able to do stuff like you used to,
Yeah,
I used to be able to work all day and then come home and tackle a project all night, a couple hours sleep, watch the kids, everything else, go back to work, and you could just go and go and go.
Yeah.
And now it's like there's just no way. Everything has to be, okay, we're going to do this much of the project today, this much of the project tomorrow. We're not going to try and do it all in one day.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah, I used to get off midnight shift at the mines, and I parked my car alongside some ancient ore dump, right? That was that was put up there like 50, 60 years ago. That was like 600, 800 feet high. And I'd just run up that son of a bitch and look for fossils and look at all the rocks and geology, and I'd be on top. And I do that for like 3-4 hours. And now, I'm trying to climb up a little hill of rocks, and I'm feeling like, you could break a fucking hip. You're just, that is disconcerting. I'm trying to reverse that.
I used to skedaddle right up a ladder. I used to climb the tower antenna we had at the house, put Christmas lights on it, like nothing. No, now every time I get on a ladder, it's like, okay, double, triple check everything and make sure my footing's good. And I'm just so conscious about, if I fall, I'm going to break something serious. Yeah.
I've taken some good falls. I'm still a little flexible, fortunately.
That's the thing. I've taken quite a few bounces and came out pretty well. So I'm like, I'm overdue. So I've never been in a cast or anything, knock on wood. So
yeah. I broke my hip 70 years ago on July 3rd of this year. It would have been 70 years ago that was the only broken bone I've ever had. I don't want to break one again. Because
when my son was playing Pee-wee football, we had a boy, really nice young man, and he wasn't the greatest athlete, but he had a lot of heart, and he was out there and they were playing on the line, and they snapped the ball, and somebody hit him right in his thigh, and it broke the thigh bone right off at the hip.
Yep.
And the scream this young man let out was it's I can still hear it, you know. And wow, yeah, that was not a good day. And yeah, he was you know, junior high, yeah, and he broke it right off at the hip. So
yep,
it was not a good start.
Yeah, my older brother did that a couple of years ago, and he was they had him on video. They had him on one of those, you know, those home cams, you know, when he fell, and it was about 108 degrees in Texas, and he was hosing himself up, and he didn't scream, but he looked really depressed.
And take care of your mailmen down there. Did you see that poor mailman dropped over dead down there in Texas?
Oh no, from heat?
From the heat. Yep.
Oh
66 years old or something. Just dropped right over. So
give them some cold water when they come drop the mail on.
Yep. Give your mailman a drink or.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, I got a few more bookmarks here for some reason. Listen to Donnie Badinsky.
Here's one citation. Here's one excerpt. Beyond environmental agents, DNA is also subject to oxidative damage from byproducts of metabolism, such as
blah blah blah. Life is hard. Life is complicated.
I just heard him doing the oxygen argument the other day, but in the early Earth, you didn't have the oxygen problem. So again.
Well, but there were a lot of other things that degraded life, and that was one of the. Like I said, it was something that early life relied upon these destructive, contaminated sources. You know. Let's see. I got another one here. I'm not sure what this is. Okay, it's 37 cells in your body will accumulate trillions of new mutations. So okay, what does he got say?
Again, this is amazing evidence for the design. And as I frequently like to talk about, we have mutations that hit reproductive cells, sperm or egg cell, and they are actually passed on. And so these DNA repair systems.
Nope. Like I was saying, most of them aren't. Most of those mutations don't make it out of the gate, you know. And there again, Donnie, check into how natural selection actually works, and you'll get an answer to your fucking question about why we have not died 100 times over with mutations. I don't know why I bookmarked that one, but let's say just one more bookmark, and I'm not sure what this one is. I don't know. Okay, a belief in the creator is more logical than a belief in naturalistic. Oh, I'm not even showing the screen, am I? Get my face off there. So a belief in the creator is more logical than a belief in naturalistic origins. And again, okay, if it's so complex that human beings can't create it with their big fingers and their great minds, you know, our great intelligence, if we can't create it in the lab, then obviously intelligence isn't what created it. Intelligence is really good at creating machines, at creating factories, but it's not so fucking good at creating self-regenerating systems like tornadoes. In fact, I think we learned how to create tornadoes in the lab, but you know that took a little bit of doing to get that far. But we haven't got it sophisticated enough to create a cell. And so why is that evidence for design when no designer has ever created anything like this? In fact, we're having trouble even wrapping our minds around the way that complex systems create themselves in life. We're having trouble. We're just now coming to the point where we can actually define what life is. And new research in biology, there's a lot of work going on defining what life is and how it works. I've been reading a guy named Robert Rosen, who has quite a theory about why we are not machines, why we are not cells, like Daniel Nicholson talks about in his papers. And he makes a mathematical case for how life works and what it actually is. And from there, we'll figure some of this stuff out. Also, the goal of abiogenesis has never, well, not really been to create life in the laboratory, to create living organisms in the laboratory. It's more to create things that are the beginning of that self-replicating system, right? We're trying to create those little simpler tornadoes, and we're just trying to figure out what conditions, like who is it? I forgot his name, unfortunately. It'll come to me. He's trying to create basically different kinds of life that may exist on other planets, and that's the basis of his research. But we're not actually trying to get a leech to crawl out of a biological soup. So anyway.
Well, my whole thing is, what their argument is, it completely falls apart. Why have all this stuff going on in the first place? Because supposedly we're in a Christian worldview, we're spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
We're magically made. Okay. So why, and then when, like when you die, you're going to have this magic body, right? That supposedly is filled with magical things. So to me, I always ask, why aren't we just made of, some kind of magical goo inside? Right? Yeah. If it's just magic, why, if you're a creator, right? All I need is the outside, right? What's on the inside doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
We could be, green goo on the inside. It doesn't matter.
Right.
So if you're going to create everything and it's all magical and spiritual, whatever energy this thing is that continues you into the afterlife and makes you an angel and all this stuff, that's all supernatural goo, right?
Yeah.
None of that is biology or chemistry or physics. It's completely out of that realm and into the supernatural realm. So I always say that it doesn't make any sense to do any of these natural things in the first place.
Yeah, we should be
unless you're like a deistic god or something.
We should be these magical, scintillating, ghostly spirit things walking around the earth. We shouldn't look like chimpanzees. Those are the animals, right? Those are
why do we have bad backs and all that kind of stuff?
Well, okay, I guess because Adam and Eve chomped an apple or something, and
not that we stood up, yeah.
But then, okay, were Adam and Eve of a different spiritual perfect form? I mean, did they look like, kind of like like a simple android would look, except you could see through them because they're pure spirit?
And then did Eve have really, really big hips?
Yeah.
Because it seems to be the problem that the women don't have very big hips. So how,
Yeah. Yeah.
Did she have a big old badunkadunk?
She could just pop them out, they
just flowed right out of there. Because she, she had to be popping them out of there left and right. She's got to make all of humanity,
Yeah, she had to pop out like a couple of dozen incestuous.
Just walk along and just dropping out,
Right. Yeah. But they had to be incestuous offspring because there's that problem.
I looked, I told people, I looked it up and I've seen these other apes giving birth. And I've been there when my wife gave birth 2 times, and I've seen plenty of other videos of women giving birth. There's a big difference.
Right, right.
That ape just kind of looks down and gives birth and says, "Oh, hello, baby."
Yeah. Yeah, when I was 7,
we all know that have been in that labor room with humans. That's rare. It does happen once in a while, but it's rare. The rest of them, we were there all day, all night. Push, push, breathe, push, push. Give me drugs. Give me drugs.
Right. Yeah, when I was 17 years old, my loving wife of 2 weeks was giving birth, and I went into the labor room, and she was like, her head started spinning around, and she started throwing up pea soup and screaming at me, "I hate you! Get the fuck out!" It's like, whoa, what the?
My wife wasn't like that, but I remember with my first son, from all the pushing and everything,
Yeah.
all the capillaries in her face were popped.
Broke.
She,
Yeah.
yeah, she looked like she had like measles or something. Her whole face was broke out from pushing. So
Yeah. Not good. Not good. Yeah. There's just so many things about the Christian myth that. I watched a thing. Okay, Midnight, Athena Midnight, Goddess of Wisdom, whatever. He had a stream, and this William Freeman, who a lot of people hate, got on with Jill, and they were talking about myth in the Bible, and this Jill was completely misunderstanding what they mean by the Bible being based on other myths like Gilgamesh, and that was a good moment in one of Midnight streams. I'm not going to say more about Midnight streams, but I tune in to watch him turn into kryptonite. You know, he's basically my kryptonite because he will invite any asshole onto his stream and let that asshole say whatever. And oh my God. And then, yeah, pretty bad streams.
did you see the Dr. Chris debate the other day on
No.
the Ark? On the Ark?
No, where was that?
I think it was on Modern Day Debate.
Modern Day Debate. No, I didn't.
I think yeah, because I'm pretty sure Amy Newman hosted it.
Okay.
But yeah, the guy he was debating though, he was very not prepared. I mean, he didn't seem like he knew the Bible. He didn't seem like he knew the science or anything. And you know, poor Chris was kind of just, do you know what the Bible says? Do you know what I mean? He kept giving him that, like, do you know anything? Why are you here in a debate? You don't seem to know much.
Was it Dr. Chris Thompson?
Yep.
Really? Oh, on Modern Day Debate. I'll have to check that out.
With I'm pretty sure it's something to do with Noah's Ark.
Yeah.
The feasibility of Noah's Ark or something like that. Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, that guy he was up against was not prepared, and
yeah,
it's kind of felt sorry for Dr. Chris because he did, he's like me, I mean, he put in the time. I do the research. I got the notes. I put in all this time, and then I sit down, and then the other person's like, "Oh yeah, hang on a second. I just got out of bed. Debate. Yeah, what are we debating? Oh yeah, okay. And it's like, dang man, I make me feel bad. I could have just showed up at the last minute too.
So Scott Duke's out there in chat. So Scott, I'm going to need a note from your doctor to explain why you're not on stream with me. Here's my co-host. I feel naked without Scott. So
I don't have that righteous beard either. Sorry.
Yeah.
I did do a trim though. It was looking a little scrappy, so I trimmed it. It's all nice and neat today. So.
Oh, it looks pretty good. Okay,
both my boys have one too. If you check out I posted on you're on my Facebook. I posted pictures of my boys. We all got a little chin fur in the picture. So
yeah, I often refer to me and my twins as we're triplets because we're personality very much the same.
Well, my son's girlfriend said, "Hey, why don't you guys, let's take a quick picture, So I said, all right. So we grabbed each other, took a picture. So I got a picture, and then my dog's right there at our feet too. So
I'll check it out.
The whole crew's in the picture on Facebook there. Yep. Those are my boys.
Okay, I want to shoot her in the head. How about that?
Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it was great. Yep.
It's always good talking to you. And everybody go check out my new video. I put a lot of work into it.
Yeah, it's linked in the first description, the first video.
And it's funny. It's funny. If you don't laugh, I'll feel bad because I wanted everybody to get a chuckle out of my video. So
I love the Lobster Man stuff. It's pretty good. Okay. Gonna shoot her in the head, guys. Thanks everybody out in chat. And thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Talk to you later.
And we're ending. Hang around for a second, Dave.